I'm going to drive the car. Linda got all the grandchildren and stuff, so the van works out real good for her, so she can go shopping and you know, load up all the stuff. That's what the reason I've been driving all these years. She's usually got a big van of some kind. She keeps loading it down. But anyhow, we really appreciate this, and this will be something we can use in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the chairman of the board of DiMucci Brothers Development Company, Mr. Sal DiMucci.
The DiMucci Companies is proud to welcome the Richard Petty family to the Towers of Ponce Inlet on the site of the old beach road course where your father, Lee Petty, made the Petty name synonymous with racing and class. Towers of Ponce Inlet makes up 6 towers, and your 3-bedroom unit overlooking the ocean will be in Building 200, adjacent to the Old North Turn. On behalf of everyone connected with the DiMucci Development Corporation, I am delighted to present you with the keys to your home away from home. I hope you may have many years of enjoyment with your family here in the Daytona Beach area. I invite anyone interested in retiring with the King to call the Towers of Ponce Inlet for information. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Welcome to the Tower.
Thank you, sir. This is going to be great. You know, now that I'm not having to drive the car, I'll have time to lollygag around on the beach, so now I've got a place to do it. So I really, really appreciate this. Thank you.
Good luck.
Well, we'll be back with more of this special Richard Petty tribute from Daytona International Speedway. He's received a condo, a Pontiac, a Honda 4-wheeler, and there's more. We'll be right back. The 1992 Pepsi 400 is the final race for King Richard Petty at Daytona International Speedway. With all of his success, Richard Petty has never forgotten the fans. From the early part of his career to the present, as long as there was someone waiting for an autograph, Richard would accommodate. One of the things he'll always be remembered for is his willingness to accommodate fans and media alike. King Richard has been, is, and will continue to be a great ambassador for the sport of stock car racing.
Ladies and gentlemen, our final presentation. Please welcome a man who is the reason for our long-lasting commitment to motorsports at ESPN. Please welcome the president of ESPN, Mr. Steve Bornstein.
Richard, over the past 12 years, you've provided countless hours of great entertainment on ESPN. So on behalf of all those fans you entertained and the men and women of our production team, we offer you an entertainment center over there, which you can put in your condo and watch your past races and next races for all time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. That'll be great. I can watch the reruns of all those 1,150 races that I've run, so I'll use that thing up. Thanks a lot.
So Richard Petty will be able to watch all those races, and Richard, some wonderful memories you'll be able to watch on ESPN as we continue to carry races for years and years, and hopefully some of those memories will be made right here today, maybe win number 201.
Well, it's nice to see the president of ESPN here, but the president of the United States is also here, and he will have some remarks for King Richard in just a moment. Welcome back to a special tribute to Richard Petty from Daytona, brought to you by First Brands Corporation, makers of STP Son of a Gun Protectant. Dr. Jerry Punch is your host down at trackside.
Thank you very much, Bob Jenkins. What a beautiful day for racing here, ladies and gentlemen. Just Chamber of Commerce weather here at Daytona Beach, Florida, as we get set for this 34th annual Pepsi 400. And what a wonderful way for Richard Petty to say goodbye at a track where he made the legend. Came here many, many years ago and raced his first race, finishing 57th. His dad went to victory lane that day. Ladies and gentlemen, while the dignitaries we are about to introduce approach the podium, all of us here can take just a moment to say thanks for the celebration we have today, the independence of our wonderful nation. And what a better way to celebrate our nation's birthday than with a wonderful sporting event and the fellowship and camaraderie among the drivers and among you, the wonderful fans. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, it is with a great deal of pleasure that I introduce to you the President of NASCAR, Mr. Bill France Jr., and the Grand Marshal for this 34th annual Pepsi 400. Please welcome the President of the United States.
Thank you, Jerry. Mr. President, 17 months ago, there were over 100,000 race fans sitting in these grandstands here at the Speedway, and many of them are here today. They were here in February of 1991, not only to see the Daytona 500, but also to participate in support of Operation Desert Storm, along with the NASCAR drivers. Before the race, they stood and waved over 100,000 American flags and joined Mike Powell and the NASCAR drivers in singing Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA to show their support for our troops involved in the Persian Gulf War. Not only are these people great race fans, but far more important, they're great Americans as well. That's why we are so proud today that you have been able to join us as we celebrate the birthday of the greatest country in the world. It is equally as fitting that you join us in a day in which we salute another great American and everybody's hero, Richard Petty. On behalf of the NASCAR fans throughout America and all over the world, we thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. Mr. President.
Thank you all very much. And I can think of no better place to wish our nation happy Independence Day, happy 4th of July than standing right here with this patriotic, wonderful turnout of people, all American crowd. Thank you very much. And this is a day when we celebrate our independence and count our blessings. And the way I see it, yes, there are problems, but we are still the freest, fairest, and the greatest country on the face of the earth. And I just met with the NASCAR drivers, a real thrill for a sports fan, and they epitomize the best in sportsmanship, the best in family, the best in patriotic values. And so today, on the 4th of July, this president comes not only to greet the American people and the fans here, but this president comes to greet a king, Richard Petty, one of the great Americans. Richard, I'm proud to be at your side.
Well, I tell you, that's the reason he's the president and I drive a race car. He can talk to the people. And that's great. He's headed for North Carolina now, and you know, up there trying to get him some votes. And you know I'm going to vote. I'm a Republican all the way through. But I just want to tell you that, Mr. President, I just really, really appreciate it. I know this was part of July the 4th, but it's part of Richard Petty's life too. And for you to come down here and do this for not only for Richard Petty, but for racing in Daytona and just the whole world in the general, we can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, President George Bush has addressed those gathered here, and he has honored Richard Petty. And I'm kind of excited. This is the first time I've ever seen a president of the United States.
Well, I'll tell you, I had the opportunity of participating in the ceremonies when Ronald Reagan was here, and it's a thrilling moment, really, for the sport of auto racing.
And it's got the crowd pumped up, that's for sure.
And I'm speechless. Can you believe that?
Once, I can't believe that.
I'm speechless.
As you can see, the president has now gotten in a pace car, and he's going to take a lap around this track before the race begins, and he will give the command in just a few moments to fire the engines to the 40 cars and drivers that will be participating in today's Pepsi 400 here at Daytona. Well, it's been a great half-hour celebration. Richard Petty has received many gifts and has been honored by the president, but I have a feeling that his thoughts are now on the job at hand, the Pepsi 400, where he could get win number 201. King Richard, a hero to everyone in NASCAR Winston Cup racing.
He was the guy that always ran the smart race and laid back, and in the end he always moved up and won the race, and he was, he was my hero.
He's always been one of my heroes. I've always pulled for him when I was coming up, and when I got the chance to race against him, that was the biggest thrill of my life.
I can remember when I was 8, 9 years old, sitting in a little Rexall drugstore in Rolla, Missouri, where I used to live, and a little place called Scott's. And I used to sit there, and I'd go through those stock car racing books, and I'd go, man, that's neat. I wish I could do that. I used to roller skate. I'd get in those roller skates and pretend I was Cale Yarborough and Richard Petty, you know. I'd zoom around them corners on roller skates.
He's the kind of guy that doesn't say much, but if you're ever standing there talking to him and he does say something, if you listen to what he says, at least everything I've ever heard him say, I thought he really knows what he's talking about. I mean, the guy's been in the sport so long. When he says something, that's really the way it is.
Don't look back, don't be scared. We've got dreams and we're still young. Just think about how far we've come.
I'm doing something that I wanted to do, not what I wanted to set out to accomplish something for, to be somebody or to be a legend or whatever you want to talk about there. It's just a deal that it just happened, and it had just happened to me, and I feel real fortunate about that part of it.
In the past 4 decades, Richard Petty has seen the face of stock car racing change dramatically. From that first short track win in 1960 to his unparalleled 200th career victory at Daytona in 1984. It was legendary battles like this one with longtime racing rival Cale Yarborough that will always be among his most cherished memories.
As far as winning races and losing races and stuff, I think I've been so fortunate with that. I don't think I can look back and say, this one is head and shoulders over any of the rest of them, although naturally the 200th one, July the 4th, with the president at the racetrack and all that had to be the highlight, I guess, of what happened during the race, but during my career.
His 200 victories may have sealed a legend, but it was his off-track magic with the fans that created the king. In an era where many sports celebrities shied away from the masses, Richard Petty moved even closer. For him, every fan was a friend, and every friend deserved their special time with the king.
It started out a long time ago, and I guess the first one that ever asked for an autograph, I was, overcome with excitement, I guess, and I signed his autograph, and probably never got over that.
Just as the eyes are the mirror to one's soul, Richard Petty's smile reflects the warmth in his heart.
He smiles all the time. It's amazing. Even when things are going bad, he's still smiling, so I try to do that. It's awful hard sometimes.
The one thing that sticks out in my mind about him is the way he just keeps on smiling no matter what happens.
He's great for the sport. Everybody loves him. I think he's one of the greatest things in racing.
I learned a long time ago it takes less energy to smile than it does to frown. There's just less muscles in you. So I guess I'm sorry enough that I just go ahead and smile. But I don't know. You know, it's a situation that you got to learn to live with good times. You got to learn to live with bad times, and I always feel like the real winners are the ones that learn to live with the bad times. Anybody can feel good and smile when they win.
And there you see a live shot of Richard Petty as he has made the transition from the stage where he received a lot of gifts today here at Daytona to race car driver. He has the helmet on, the gloves are going on, and before long he'll fire the engine on the STP Pontiac and will begin his 54th race here at Daytona, seeking a win of the Pepsi 400, a 4th of July tradition that continues today here at Daytona International Speedway. And welcome back. I'm Bob Jenkins. Happy 4th of July, everybody, from all of us here at ESPN. We've got a great show lined up for you this afternoon of racing. 400 miles of competition here at Daytona International Speedway. It should be just a tremendous race, Ned.
Yes, it should be, Bob. You know, the conditions for the Pepsi 400 are totally different from the Daytona 500. Takes a different setup on the race car, takes a different mentality in approaching this race because of the heat. It makes a great deal of difference in this race.
It's been hot and humid here for the past few days, but the weatherman says no afternoon rain showers that are pretty common here this time of year.
Forget about the rain. I walked out of the hotel this morning at 6:30, and it was like I walked into a sauna. That's the problem the drivers face today, other than the racetrack, Ned, is the heat inside the race car. It's going to be incredible, 125, 30 degrees.
By the way, I got to ask you, did you fold this? That's very nice,
yeah.
Benny. You
Yeah,
spent
see?
all night doing that, I'll bet you.
Oops, excuse me. Sorry.
The Pepsi 400 from Daytona International Speedway is about to begin. And the Grand Marshal for this event, you saw him just a few minutes ago speaking to the audience here, is the President of the United States, George Bush. And it's my pleasure to say we go down to trackside now to get those famous words from the President.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, for those famous words, I present to you our Grand Marshal, the President of the United States. Mr. President.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
To life and now get set for racing here at Daytona, and here is the die-hard starting lineup. The pole sitter is Sterling Marlin in the Maxwell House Coffee Ford at 189.366, car number 22. On the outside of row number 1, there he is, the King, Richard Petty. First time on the front row since 1984. Richard Petty outside row number 1.
And starting on the inside of row number 2, Davey Allison, the current Winston Cup point leader. Of course, he's the man everybody's looking to beat here today in the Haviland Ford number 28. And starting on the outside of the second row is Mark Martin. In the Valvoline Ford, Mark is also one of those considered to be a threat.
And here's a young man who needs to turn it around, Ricky Rudd, the Tide Chevrolet. And insiders say he is running extremely well in that Chevrolet. Could be a winner today. Ernie Irvin on the outside. He needs to come back from Michigan. Remember, just a couple of laps into the race, he crashed. The Kodiak Chevrolet also running well.
The Quaker State Ford starts in 7th position. The drivers from Chemung, New York. That's Brett Bodine. And starting in 8th position, the Citgo Ford. Morgan Shepherd from Conoway, North Carolina, car number 21.
And starting in the 5th row will be Michael Waltrip, who had a good run here in the Daytona 500. Hopes to pick up where he left off just before he blew an engine. On the outside of the 5th row is Dale Jarrett in the Joe Gibbs Interstate Battery Chevrolet.
The next driver, a guy who told me last night this car is a rocket ship, Kenny Schrader, the Kodiak Chevrolet. And alongside him, Richard Petty's son, Kyle Petty, the mellow yellow Pontiac.
Starting in 13th position is Darrell Waltrip in the Western Auto Chevrolet, and alongside the Sunoco Ford, driven by Terry Labonte from Corpus Christi, Texas. Wally Dallenbach starts 15th in the Keystone Ford, and outside will be Harry Gant in the Skoal Bandit Oldsmobile, car number 33. And now as you look at the rest of the starting lineup, the field begins to move away from pit road onto the 2.5-mile tri-oval here at Daytona as we get set for the Pepsi 400.
So Bill Elliott back in the 20th position or 19th position. Remember, he was on the outside pole for the Daytona 500.
A lot of good drivers starting in the middle to rear of the field this afternoon, so we'll be watching them move up. Dale Earnhardt, as you saw a few minutes ago, starting in 22nd position. And those are the 40 cars and drivers, and there is a live shot inside the pace car that is carrying Bill France and President George Bush.
Bob, I've been impressed. Every time he has gotten in that car and sat down, he has fastened his seatbelt.
Setting a good example for the rest of the nation. And there is Richard Petty, who is lined up just behind the pace cars in row number 1.
He's waving to the car behind him. The fellow's waving and saying, good luck, Richard. He's acknowledging that signal from the guy behind him.
So a couple of warm-up laps, and you know, we've spent a lot of time here in the last 35 minutes or so building the excitement, but the fact is that there is a race at hand. Davey Allison, of course, is the Winston Cup points leader and is looking for an addition to his points lead.
Well, he already has 4 victories this year in the Winston Cup Series, plus he won the Winston. He is the top money winner, has reached $1 million earlier than any driver has in the history of NASCAR Winston Cup racing, and he's looking to add on to that today. And I think most of those drivers figure that Davey Allison might be the man that they have to beat here today.
You're going to be looking for some of the drivers that we mentioned starting in the mid to back of the field, moving up quickly?
Oh, I think so. I think the draft is going to equalize everything. Qualifying, look at George Bush as he goes down the straightaway. 110 miles an hour, probably 115 miles an hour, scared to death.
He seems to be enjoying it, though, waving to the fans as he goes by. John Kernan is down on pit road.
Guys, we've been talking about Richard Petty, but one guy on Thursday kind of stole the show. That's Sterling Marlin, who knocked Richard off of the pole late in qualifying by about 1/10 of a second. Now, when Sterling got out of that race car after doing that, the 15,000 fans or so in attendance all booed Sterling. It's not that they don't like him. It's because they wanted to see the king, Richard Petty, start this race from the pole. But actually, if you look at statistics, then Sterling may have done a favor for Richard. He doubled his chances of winning because the pole sitter has only won this race twice, while the second place car has won it 4 times. Now let's go to Dr. Jerry Punch.
And John, for many of these guys today, it is their one and only chance to possibly complete a race here at Daytona. Remember back in February, 17 cars did not make it to halfway. On lap 92, that massive crash off turn 2. So for a number of contenders like Sterling Marlin, like Bill Elliott, like Ernie Irvin, none of those guys got a chance to chase the guy whose pits are behind me, Davey Allison, who won that 500. This is their one and only shot. So it's not just their Pepsi 400, it's also their Daytona 500. Bob?
Hey, Doc, where'd you change? In the phone booth or something?
Boy, he did make a quick transition, didn't he? And look at the king. He has pulled alongside the pace car, carrying the president, and they're saluting each other. President Bush with the thumbs up to King Richard Petty as he slides back now into his starting position outside the front row alongside Sterling Marlin.
What do you think, Ned? Can he lead that first lap?
I don't know. Yeah, I think that there's an excellent chance that he can, and surely nobody wouldn't take that honor away from him.
John Kernan mentioned now the fans booed Sterling Marlin when he knocked King Richard off the pole. And I have a feeling that Sterling may, if at all possible, shall we say, allow Richard to lead the first lap here this afternoon.
I don't know. That Davey Allison might dive down on the inside on the back straightaway and pass both of them, or at least try to.
Well, there's no question that nobody is going to give Richard Petty the victory here today. But let's face it, he has put in a lot of testing time here at Daytona. This is his final hurrah, and he is prepared for it.
Well, I think he's the best prepared that he's been in a long, long time to win.
And most competitive. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. Field now making another warm-up lap as the car carrying the president has pulled off of the racetrack. He has a busy day ahead of him. Is flying in just a few minutes to North Carolina. He'll participate in a parade, and then will later be flying, I believe, to Europe later tonight. So the field is ready for some racing, and so are we here at Daytona International Speedway as we're set to bring you live flag-to-flag coverage of the Pepsi 400. And our Speed World coverage is being brought to you by Pontiac and your local Pontiac dealer. We build excitement. By Quaker State, the Big Q is One Tough Motor Oil. And by Smooth Bush Beer and Easy Drinkin' Bush Light. We'll be back with the start of this 160-lap event here at Daytona, the World Center of Racing, right after this. Glad coming back. Boy, I have got more papers strewn around here than
we did.
I think we talked about a lot more than we were supposed to. Yahoo! Bill, I'll need you to help me with this stuff here because I've just got so many papers, and I'll keep her for right now. Well, the exciting Gillette Halfway Challenge is coming up in today's race. The driver leading at the halfway point will win $10,000, and a fan at home will have a chance to win a beautiful Chevrolet Lumina Z34. If you have entered the contest for this race and your entry is selected and you are called at home, you must name the driver who won the Gillette Halfway Challenge $10,000 reward to win the Chevrolet Lumina. If you want to enter the contest at next week's Miller Genuine Draft 500 on July 19th at Pocono, write to Gillette Halfway Challenge, Post Office Box 2246, St. Petersburg, Florida, 33731-2246. You must be 18 years of age or older to enter, and we must receive your entry by the 18th of July to be eligible for next week's Gillette Halfway Challenge. Field now coming down through the tri-oval, and that's the roof cam that will be on top of Richard Petty's car. And one more lap. And we should be getting the green flag. Here's a look at the point standings as Davey Allison, four-time winner this year, remains on top. 67 points behind is Bill Elliott. Then comes Alan Kulwicki, Harry Gant, and Dale Earnhardt, who has had some bad luck the last couple of races, has slid to fifth. Terry Labonte, Mark Martin, Morgan Shepherd, Jeff Bodine, and Ricky Rudd complete the top 10 in the quest for the Cup standings.
Alan Kulwicki, another driver that we didn't talk about, the starting back 26th, third in the Winston Cup point settings currently.
We have an in-car camera being carried by Mark Martin, who lines up in fourth position right behind Richard Petty outside of row number 2. You can see the yellow lights are flashing on the racetrack, but the lights above the pace car are out, indicating they will get green next time around. Mark Martin will be carrying the telemetry. You can watch the RPMs, the gear he is in, and the speed that he is achieving. All of this in the telemetry carried by Mark Martin.
And he will start the race in second gear. As he comes off turn 4, he will downshift to second gear, and that's where he'll start the race.
Phillips 66 in-car camera being carried by Jimmy Hensley.
That's Stanley Smith right directly in front of Jimmy Hensley, a Meritron battery car.
And he also will be carrying the telemetry.
You see he's already in second gear.
Getting ready for the start, and Bobby Hamilton in the Country Time car will also be carrying one of our in-car cameras. The field now making its way into the banking in turn number 3. We're just a few moments away from the start of the Pepsi 400, a 4th of July tradition. Richard Petty outside row number 1 alongside Sterling Marlin, and he is getting set to look for green.
Ned, I bet you Richard Petty is as nervous right now as he was his first race in Daytona.
He probably is, but I started to say a moment ago when he crawled in that STP Pontiac that might have been the most relaxed he's been all day, but he better get relaxed right now.
Watch with us the start and how things go on the first lap of the Pepsi 400. Richard Petty has the lead going into turn 1.
He's got it so far.
And the crowd is going to burst with enthusiasm and response and applause that this place has not seen in years if he has that lead coming down the tri-oval on lap number 1.
He moves over so to hopefully to stay in front of these guys, but Sterling Marlin pulls up on the outside. We just switched the starting order.
They go 2 by 2 through the banking in turns 3 and 4. Petty to the inside, Sterling Marlin to the outside. Here they come down off the banking to about to complete lap number 1. Who is going to have the lead? They're side by side as they come down. Richard Petty is going to lead it.
That's magic, Ned.
Yes, sir. That was great. Absolutely great.
Wet towel sticking out of the mouth of Richard Petty. Looking in the rearview mirrors to see everybody behind him.
Yeah, say, okay, you catch right side by side back there, and I'll continue to lead. But look on the inside, 3 cars got hooked up. There's Mark Martin, Davey Allison, and Ricky Rudd. Martin trying to move into second place. Okay, guys, the ceremony's over now. We got to go racing. I don't think they let Richard Petty lead that lap, but but they say, okay, he's had his glory. We're going to go up there and see what we can do with him now.
Mark Martin and Sterling Marlin are side by side behind Richard Petty, and then Davey Allison is alongside Ernie Irvin. They're 2 by 2 behind Richard Petty.
Inside of Mark Martin's car, we see how many RPMs he turns down the back straightaway, 6,700 coming off the corner. Now, Davey Allison's going to try it on the outside. Davey's not having a lot of luck getting in the corner net on the inside. You notice how much he backed up going in the corner?
Yeah, he wanted to get his car on the high side. He told me yesterday that the back end of the car was loose going into the corner, pushed a little bit coming off. It'll probably run better on the high side of the racetrack with that kind of condition. Of course, I'm sure they worked on it after that, so I don't know where it stands now.
Continues to lead. He's looking back on Sterling Marlin, who is just within a car length or so. There you can see the first time that he has led this year, and Dale Earnhardt is experiencing problems. He's going back.
He sure is. That's Phil Barkdahl right behind Dick Trickle. Phil Barkdahl behind him.
Meanwhile, up at the front of the pack, it is still Richard Petty leading as they go down in single file formation.
And Mark Martin got caught down on the inside, and everybody went by him. He does get back in line now in front of Dale Jarrett, but boy, he lost about 6 positions.
Richard saying this is the way it used to be in Daytona. We can see how far back that Martin has fallen.
And the telemetry indicating his gear, RPM, and speed.
197 miles per hour as you enter turn 1. Now he slows down to 190 miles per hour in the corner. That's how much the banking drags the speed off the car.
Jerry Punch is with Richard Childress, Dale Earnhardt's car owner.
And RC, he is dropping back here. The car's slowing. What's the problem?
Well, right now we just got a dead plug on it, or dead cylinder. He said it just started missing right around there under the, getting ready to take the green flag. We didn't have enough time to bring him in and work on it.
So you have to wait and maybe hope for an early yellow.
Well, we just wait until we get a chance to fix it.
Richard Childress here in the Earnhardt pits, and he's helpless up there, guys, on 7 cylinders. He can't keep up, not with a plate on the engine.
And here goes Sterling Marlin trying to take the lead from Richard.
Earnhardt has fallen back to 29th position as we do have a new leader. Sterling Marlin has gone to the front, Petty at second, and here comes Ernie Irvin looking to take over second spot from Richard. Davey Allison runs in 4th, and Ricky Rudd is 5th.
Andy Belmont is in the pits. Good on his car. He started back near the rear of the pack. As we look out Richard's windshield, or is that from the top of his car? The Sterling Marlin.
Coming down to complete lap number 6. Richard Petty led the first 5, but Sterling Marlin's taken the Maxwell House 4 to the front of the field in the Pepsi 400, live from Daytona International Speedway. Next person that this network hires is a secretary for Bob to keep his papers. Okay. Joining us today is Airship Shamu. Here you go, Bill. Okay, Glenn, you're here. Good, thank you.
Oh, Richard got it loose, didn't he?
Billboards. Here's more disclaimer on that. Oof. Oof. I don't have time to watch the race. Whoops.
Is that Earnhardt on the apron?
Back at at Daytona International Speedway and the Pepsi 400. Ernie Irvan is in the lead with Ricky Rudd running second, and then Sterling Marlin. And coming in for a pit stop is Dale Earnhardt. The car slowed on the racetrack, and it's just barely able to make it to its pit area. Jerry?
And the news is not good at all for the 5-time Winston Cup champion, Bob. I just talked to the Danny Lawrence and the folks here in the Goodrich crew. As the crowd, you can hear the crowd behind me responding and waving as they see that black Goodrich Chevrolet. It's been so dominant for so many years in NASCAR racing, rolling to a halt. The engine is not running, and Earnhardt said the car just got tighter and tighter. They project that the engine may have gone away. They're going to check it right now as they raise the hood here. Meanwhile, we're under green flag conditions. Earnhardt's chance to pick up another Pepsi 400 win has gone away. The field comes rumbling by and heads back to turn 1.
And certainly he's also concerned about Winston Cup points that will take him to another championship coming into this event. 5th in the point standings, and he is suffering from engine problems here in the early going. John Connet is at the other end of pit road.
Well, Bob, after leading several laps, Richard Petty has dropped back just a little bit. He's radioed his crew chief, Robbie Loomis, and has told him that the car has gotten really loose right now, which is kind of strange because at the start of the race, he told Robbie that the car had a push in it. So Richard's just going to ride it out. They're going to try and correct the handling problem during the first round of pit stops.
Richard Petty dropping back to 11th position after leading the first 5 laps. And joining us today is Airship Shamu, SeaWorld's traveling goodwill ambassador. Shamu represents SeaWorld Marine Life Parks in Florida, California, Ohio, and Texas. And there's a shot from Airship Shamu looking down on the field as it makes its way through turns number 1 and 2 here at Daytona and onto the backstretch. They're being led by Ernie Irvan.
Those folks that told me that Ricky Rudd's car, Tide Chevrolet, was running well, didn't lie to me, did they?
No, they didn't. Yeah, that car is running very, very good.
Got a couple of Chevrolets and a Ford running up front right now. Sterling Marlin, the 3rd car there. Then a little bit of racetrack back to 4th place, and that is Davey Allison. 3-car breakaway at the moment. And Punch has an update on Dale Earnhardt.
And Bob, the news is not good for the Earnhardt fans and the people who want him to repeat and maybe get that 6th championship. The word I just told a minute ago, they think it is a burned piston. If that's the case, he is through for the day, and he will lose many, many valuable Winston Cup points.
The defending Winston Cup champion behind the wall in the early going here at Daytona.
Ernie Irvan running a little bit higher on the racetrack than Rudd. Ricky right on the bottom, and here comes Dale Jarrett. The interstate battery car, Ned, he's on the move.
Yeah, he's found a high groove in the turns, Benny, that's working for him. He's dropped back to about 10th, and now he's moved it up to 6th.
This is the shot from Mark Martin. 190 miles an hour in turn number 3.
Down to 180, 188 miles per hour was the lowest.
And as those tires get heated up and worn a little bit, that speed will probably drop a little bit in the turns.
There's 4th, 5th, and 6th. That is Davey Allison, Morgan Shepherd, and Dale Jarrett. And here is a Napa field summary, the first of the race. This is how the field was running not 5 laps ago, not 3 laps ago, but the last time around Daytona International Speedway. Watch for your particular favorite. Now, of course, positions are being changed constantly. Dale Jarrett just passed the 21 car and moved into 5th position.
He definitely got that high groove working, doesn't he, Ned?
Especially in turns 1 and 2. That's where it's really working for him. He tries it up here in 3 and 4, but it doesn't work as well up there as it does in 1 and 2.
It's strange how things work from one side of the racetrack to the other side of the racetrack.
Well, there was a 3-car breakaway, but now everybody has fallen back into single file, and that has allowed Davey Allison and Jarrett and Morgan Shepherd to catch the first 3, Marlin, Rudd, and Ernie Irvan. Punch is with Dale Earnhardt.
Well, Dale's sitting patiently in the car. Dale, this has to be a heartbreaker for you early on at Daytona.
Well, I don't know what happened. We run so good in practice yesterday afternoon. The engine ran fine. And started off there, had a little bit of a mess in it, and we thought, might have been plug wire or something, and then the engine started tightening up. So undoubtedly, I had a bearing going out of it, and we didn't catch it. We checked everything over this morning, and, it's one of them deals. It's tough.
That epitomizes the tough day for the defending Winston Cup champion.
Well, I'll tell you, when you fall out early and you're back there at 38th, 39th, or maybe even 40th in this case, then as far as the points are concerned, it's awfully hard to make that up.
Yeah, it's a very destructive thing that has happened to Dale Earnhardt in terms of points. Ernie Irvan beginning to separate himself a little bit from second place Ricky Rudd as they race down the backstretch. And there is Richard Petty, who led the first 5 laps, but is now right behind Michael Waltrip, running 12th.
Yeah, he got the car real loose as he was leading the race. He got high coming off turn 4. The car got loose, so Richard wisely, he's backed up. And as John Kernan said from the pits, they will make adjustments when he makes that pit stop and try to get the car dialed in. I don't think we've heard the last of Richard Petty. Not today, anyway.
I think that's the problem they can fix pretty easily if they get a chance in the pits.
Darrell Waltrip is running right behind Richard Petty. And there is Jeff Bodine also. These first 6 cars now hanging right together, and both Allison and Jarrett are up high.
Yeah, Davey saw what Jarrett was doing there, and he picked up on it and started going high in the turn.
Now here is Morgan Shepherd in the Citgo Ford moving alongside Dale Jarrett, and Kenny Schrader pulls alongside Mark Martin into turn 3. Now Ken Schrader did undergo surgery a couple of weeks ago and thinks he can run the entire 400 miles here this afternoon. If he cannot, Buddy Baker is standing by, and I talked to Buddy yesterday, and boy, he was just saying that was the greatest car that he's ever driven, and he didn't want to wish Schrader any bad luck, but he sure would like to drive it.
Well, I'm sure it would be a thrill to get in that thing. As Denny said, Schrader said it was a rocket.
Well, who better to update the surgery on Ken Schrader than Dr. Jerry Punch?
Thank you, Bob. You mentioned he was in surgery a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it was 12 days ago. The Monday following Michigan, he was lying on an operating room table. Dr. Jerry Petty, a noted neurosurgeon who's operated on many Winston Cup drivers, doing neck surgery, trying to decompress a pinched nerve and a disc that he had dislocated in his neck. Now, Schrader wasn't sure he'd be able to come to Daytona. He wanted to start the car, but he's had such a tremendous recovery. He said, I wanted to get in a race car 4 days after the operation, but they wouldn't let me. So he's going to try to run the whole race today. The big concern for Schrader will be the heat. Surgery, not being able to do anything for a week and a half, takes so much out of you. You may be a little bit too weak to make it all afternoon. It's about 112 to 114 degrees, our latest count here off the asphalt on pit road.
Hot and humid afternoon at Daytona International Speedway. It's not even afternoon yet, but close, as the Pepsi 400 is underway on the 4th of July, 1992. Here are the top 10, and we'll be back with more live coverage after this.
Car's fixing to get away.
You to do one other thing for me. I have to do a feature, a highlights package after this is over for Speed Week. Just keep the highlights. Just write them down. It's King Richard Petty's final race at Daytona International Speedway. Richard's first Daytona 500 win came in the track's 6th year, 1964. He led all but 16 laps and averaged 154.3, at that time the fastest Daytona 500 ever. It was the first of his 55 superspeedway victories. At age 27, he was Daytona's youngest winner. Once again, the shot from our airship Shamu high overhead Daytona International Speedway on Pepsi 400 Day, July 4th. We welcome you to our live coverage, and at the moment it is Ernie Irvin leading Ricky Rudd, Sterling Marlin, and Davey Allison, and 20 of 160 laps are complete. Ernie Irvin took over the lead a few laps ago. Richard Petty led the first 5 laps.
I think Ernie's car looks so good, Ned. These other guys are struggling. They're running high, they're running low. His car just seems to be sitting there.
Yeah, it does. It seems to work wherever he wants to put it. And, yeah, you're right. The ones behind him are searching around. But I tell you, here's the fellow Bobby Hamilton, last year's Rookie of the Year winner. Started back in the 25th position and has moved up, Bob.
14th right now for Bobby Hamilton in that number 68 car, right ahead of Jeff Bodine.
Running a Chevrolet. They've been running Oldsmobiles for several years and decided to change for a Chevrolet. It's working good for it.
There's Kyle Petty right ahead of Bobby Hamilton.
The reason for that, they've been announced that next year Oldsmobile is not going to be active in Winston Cup racing. So
they get the jump on next year and start with the Chevy right now. Jeff Bodine also up there trying that high line out of turn 4 onto the tri-oval. Richard Petty right behind Jeff.
And the Motorcraft crew earlier today made a pit stop, simulated a pit stop for President Bush down in the garage area.
Yeah, the president arrived here about 9:30 and then came over to the garage area. He was treated to a demonstration of pit stop, also how the cars are inspected technically for a race like this. And then, of course, he made his way to the podium, and you heard his remarks that he made to the thousands of race fans gathered here on July 4th.
Bob, here's a couple of Chevrolets fixing to hook up and pull away. They've already almost lost Sterling Marlin in the draft back there.
So we have
Irvin and Ricky Rudd.
Yeah, 2 Chevrolets of Rudd and Irvin. Here is Bobby Hamilton and Jeff Bodine both moving around. Kyle Petty and now Kyle and Richard are running together on the racetrack.
While they're dialing back the Keystone car down on the inside, there comes Jimmy Hensley. Or is that Rusty Wallace?
That's Rusty Wallace. It's all right. Have your eyes checked. We'll be all right.
Yeah. So the black car, I thought that was Hensley, but it's Rusty Wallace, the Miller Jr. black car.
Inside Richard Petty's STP Pontiac.
And we can see how high that Richard is running the STP Pontiac, just how high up the racetrack he's moved, trying to get a good grip and cure some of that looseness problem that he told his crew chief he had.
Wally Donald back, looking good here in the Keystone Beer Ford.
That didn't Kyle's cars was not handling well either. He had jumped up there in the top 10 at the beginning of the race, and then he began to go back a little bit. So evidently the Mellow Yellow Pontiac is not handling to his liking at the moment.
Putting a lap on Jimmy Means as they come down through the tri-oval. And there's Bill Elliott closing in on Rusty Wallace.
And Elliott back in the 18th position.
Well, he's picked up 2. He started 20th.
Yeah. He's the defending champion of this race. And King Richard has passed his son Kyle, so Richard moves up another position to 14th.
You see, that's what Richard has done. His car wasn't working. He's now moved up the racetrack. The cars have slowed down enough that that high groove is working well enough he can start passing some cars.
And speaking of slowing down, you probably noticed that the qualification speed for the pole sitter was down from earlier this year, 189.3. Now, normally speeds are lower for the Pepsi 400 because of weather and other traffic conditions. However,